Hello everyone, welcome to my Batman Arkham Asylum, hard difficulty, no damage walkthrough. This is the Botanical Gardens, and at the start of the Botanical Garden section, there is a Predator encounter, and I screwed up my strategy for this initial Predator encounter because I wanted to try to get this on the very first attempt. However, when I go to use the quick Batarang on the very first henchman, it unfortunately clips into the geometry, and so it makes a noise, and it throws off the pathing of every single enemy. I mean, I'm still able to make the strategy look very similar to how it would have gone had my Batarang not clipped against the geometry, but I really wish this wasn't the case. But watch this. I throw my Batarang, it clips into the staircase, he gets alerted a little bit, and the other enemies are just going off on different paths right now, because they know you're there a bit, and I'm going to be planting two explosive gels right over here, one at the top of the stairs and the other one at the bottom of the stairs, so that I can take out any henchman that happens to get very far away from the body and just camp on the stairs. But I always take out this guy next, and normally when the strategy goes well, you have to use a Batarang on him when he's right near the railing, and then you need to jump the other way and then like use the ground finish on him. And then you need to get over to this gargoyle right over here, and you need to use your multi-Batarang in order to take out these two enemies. And unfortunately, my third Batarang prioritized that guy because he unfortunately decided to randomly path right over there. So the auto aim prioritized that. So I'm going to use my explosive gel in order to stun this guy, and he's getting back up, so I'm going to have to use the back club, but he saw me just then during his rising animation, so this guy's running. I take this guy out. I'm going to hide behind this corner right over here, and I'm going to use the quick Batarang to take this guy out, and that's the end of the section. If only my Batarang had not clipped on that stair, I could have easily done this section without any problems, but that's just the problem sometimes, because the Batarangs have this tendency of curving when you're throwing them, and it doesn't factor in any potential geometry that might get in the way when it's curving. That can be a problem sometimes, and this could be easily fixed if Batman threw his Batarangs in a straight path. And the thing is that there are those moments where Batman does throw his Batarangs in a straight path. I think this is more so the case in the later games, but not so much here. But I still think there are those moments where you expect the Batarang to go in a straight path, since the game should be factoring in any potential geometry, but it doesn't always work like that. But whatever, let's just talk about some tangents that I was discussing in the previous video. So, I was talking a lot about Batman's moral code. I was talking about a lot of the distinctions and differences between Batman and Spider-Man, and, like, how people don't really understand Batman's moral code that well. And, a lot of people have this belief that Batman's moral code is just a handicap, just preventing him from actually dealing with crime the proper way in their minds. But, it's a lot more than that. And, relating this to another point, I remember watching Batman Arkham video's Arkham City walkthrough, and I was watching the part of the walkthrough where he was taking on Hugo Strange and stopping Protocol 10, and I saw people praising Hugo Strange's plan with Protocol 10 with eliminating all the criminals in Batman Arkham City. And what they failed to realize, I mean, they should have done the side missions, surely, but Hugo Strange was using Protocol 10 not only to get rid of these criminals, to make himself look like a hero, but also for a very evil alternative, which is he was trying to kill all the political prisoners he had imprisoned in Arkham City and anyone else who had evidence against him. And this was hinted, or at least indicated, in the Deadshot side mission. And even Batman acknowledges in other parts of the game that there are political prisoners there that have not committed any crimes, and the only reason they were even thrown into Arkham City is because they had evidence against Hugo Strange, and Hugo Strange managed to manipulate current facts in order to get them thrown into Arkham City. So in a very clever fashion, he was able to use Protocol 10, like superficially at face value with Protocol 10, it looks like he's using it to get rid of the criminals, but when you look at it deeper, he's using Protocol 10 as a way to get rid of the political prisoners who have evidence against him to make himself safe. So he was using Protocol 10 as a way to kill the political prisoners in a very incognito fashion, because they would get lost among the body count and everyone would assume that they were all just villains or criminals, when that's not true. So Hugo Strange might come across as being the savior of Gotham superficially, when in actuality, he's just as bad as the villains he killed, because he was trying to kill innocent civilians as well. And not only that, but he cost Gotham City a lot of money. Like, after the events of Protocol 10, there was, like, a huge amount of restitution given to criminals who survived the events of Protocol 10. and Gotham had to sacrifice a lot of funds in order for Protocol 10 to even be a thing. So he damaged Gotham City financially because of Protocol 10. So through his selfish actions, he did a lot of damage to the city. Like, in his haste to sort of save Gotham City in his own deluded mindset, he ended up doing a lot of damage in the process. And in some cases, people might disagree because they said that crime was dropping under Protocol 10. But think of it this way, right? Remember that alternate ending that you can get in Batman Arkham City when Catwoman chooses not to save Batman, but the developers don't want you to do that, so they rewind time? Well, it's clear that even though Protocol 10 happened and a lot of the criminals had died, Joker was still able to amass a lot of power, amass a huge army against Gotham City, and kill so many people if Catwoman chose not to save Batman. So what they just demonstrated is Protocol 10 wouldn't have contributed to anything because the same event of there being so much crime in the city that it would just overwhelm Gotham City would still happen. So based on that ending, it's definitely clear that Hugo Strange's plan to kill off all the criminals and villains was going to be ineffective anyway, regardless of whether Batman had stopped it or not. So that is definitely the best argument I can give against this whole notion that killing all these criminals would just allow Gotham City to be better. And furthermore, it only benefits Gotham City in the moment. Simply killing off all the criminals doesn't, like, help in strengthening Gotham City for the future. Like, it doesn't make any sense in that regard. Like, Batman's plans to actually, like, spare the criminals and his moral code is there to benefit the future, whereas Hugo Strange's Protocol 10 plan, not only was it villainous, and, like, when you look at it deep down, but it only works in the moment. It's not going to be that effective. And all the fundamental flaws in Gotham City society will still be intact without the villains to really highlight a lot of those flaws present in the system. And that's probably another reason why Batman spares the villains that he encounters, because evil is there to inform good, to help strengthen good, to really see a lot of the flaws in society. But it's just Batman's one-dimensional way of approaching his moral code doesn't really allow the citizens of Gotham to see those holes very well. So that's probably why it hasn't gotten off the ground correctly. Either that or the writers just chose not to think about it realistically like that. And another reason, building off the previous point, is that having the villains there gives the citizens of Gotham a villain to focus all their anger on. Whereas if there weren't any villains, they would most likely make conflict with themselves because, believe it or not, human beings are very like violent creatures. You know, we kind of desire conflict. You know, we talk so much about peace and the like, but the thing is that it's very easy for us to get bored in life and just we want to experience some energy. So we kind of express this energy through conflicts with ourselves. So I feel like in some cases, Batman understands this part of human psychology, where he knows that people are going to eventually come into conflict with themselves because it's all part of that need for energy. It's all part of that need for something to drive them, which is conflict. And, you know, like we have these instilled personal freedoms within us, and like, you know, we have this tendency of trying to force our own romances upon others. We like to, you know, abuse our freedoms in order to feel powerful, like, above others. Like that's just probably something that Batman has acknowledged, but he hasn't vocally said it to the audience members when we're watching him do the kind of things that he's doing. But in case you're confused as to what I mean, like, just in simple terms, Batman spares the villains so that the civilians in Gotham have someone to hate and despise, and because those villains exist, there won't be any moments where the citizens will try to come into conflict with each other. They won't try to fight each other because there's a greater evil outside of their circle of life that will infringe upon their own circle of life. Like, that's what I mean. Like, they need someone to fight, and the villains serve as that perfect substitute. But if there aren't any villains, then eventually former allies will become villains. And it's something like that. I imagine that's just something that Batman has considered. And it makes sense, because I feel like we've all gone through this at some point in our lives. Like, just think as well, like, how many times in our personal lives have we gotten in a fight with a family member over something very trivial? Or, like, how many times have you gotten in a fight with a stranger over something very trivial as well? I mean, sometimes it is justified, other times it isn't, but mainly it's when it's unjustified. But in a sense, we try our best to create our own evils. We try to twist a lot of the facts to suit our own theories of evil so that we don't feel like we're the bad guy. And like maybe that plays a role in Batman's moral code. Maybe this is something he's observed throughout his times traversing the world. Because we know that Batman had actually traveled the world in order to find some way to fight crime, and this was touched upon briefly in Batman Begins when he was living among the poor people of different countries, when he was actually having to commit crimes of his own in order to stay alive. And that's another thing as well, survival. You know, like, the thing is that, you know, this is something I really feel like Batman doesn't think about when fighting crime, but he's very one-dimensional in how he approaches his war on crime, and he's not really considering how, like, the life of a normal person is hard enough as it is. I mean, do you know how hard it is for someone to even live in a city or in a state? I mean, we have, like, financial problems, we have low-paying jobs, we have to work the minimum wage, we're getting pushed down by so many people, we're having to find jobs, we're having to find, like, PhD programs, and the thing is that because a lot of those school programs and a lot of these job programs are having to manage so many people, we never get our chance to express ourselves, and then we have all these really stupid restrictions put upon the education system that just prevent us from finding new opportunities, like the SAT, the ACT, the GRE. They never test us on anything that's crucial for a future job. And I should know, because I really feel like, with where I am now in my real job, I feel like none of the experiences I had in elementary, middle, and high school were ever that crucial to even, like, understanding how to do this job effectively. And the thing is that it really feels like in our education system, we do our education not because it's beneficial to us, but to actually get some piece of paper that says that we have the ability to comprehend information. And then when we get to our jobs, they explain everything on how to do the job effectively. And it has nothing, like, you don't even need an education in order to understand this. You just got to understand, like, the instructions given to you, and that's how the job will work. And yet we're still being paid very little for all of that. And, like, we have so many of these hurdles in our way when it comes to stupid tests like the SAT, the GRE, and the ACT, or like with all these other stupid tests, and then with, like, the whole conflict with just trying to find jobs and the like. You know, I really don't feel like Batman has really considered that when he's considering the war on crime. And, you know, there's a reason why people say that, you know, criminals have an easier time, criminals have more rights than others. Like, we always seek the easier paths to get a really great reward in the end. And, you know, like, that's why there's a lot of criminals on the street. That's probably why Batman deals with a lot of criminals. Because the way these villains present themselves to these other henchmen, like, why do you think the Joker has so many henchmen? Because he's giving them the chance to do easy things in order to make a living, and he's getting the money for that because of the fact that he probably deals in the black market, because he is able to make a profit off of suffering and conflict and misery. And, you know, people don't care, because the way we live in our society, the way a normal person lives in society, we're almost numb to these things that are morally wrong and morally right, and we care more about the financial side because that's just how we've structured our society. That's how Gotham City's structured its society. And it makes so much sense. Like, I really hope you guys are understanding this, but that's probably why the life of a good person is something that feels worse than living the life of a bad person. And I'm guessing, like, the life of a good person, like, people who live these good lives go through a lot more suffering and, like, in their normal lives as part of, like, the societal norms that we've instilled upon ourselves with our society, compared to a normal criminal who doesn't have to deal with any of that, and all he's doing is doing easy tasks for money. And he's taking his aggressions out on a society that has shunned him. And I feel like there are some villains in Batman's rogues gallery that have actually become villains because of the fact that Gotham City shunned them. Like, look at Anarchy, for instance. This is something that I really feel like Arkham Origins did a great job with. Anarchy was a great example of someone who is the perfect representation of everything that I'm describing. Like, he recruited the disenfranchised, he recruited the poor people, he recruited homeless people because they related to him. Like, he was actually doing a great job at really presenting this kind of persona of someone that the people could look towards, like a reason to live. And yet, like, they still feel like there's a purpose in life, and they're not encountering any of the normal struggles and stresses that are instilled upon good people because of how poorly set up our society is. And they had the perfect opportunity to bring back anarchy in Batman Arkham Knight as being the perfect villain to make Batman question his moral code and how he should improve upon it. And I really feel like Batman Arkham Knight should have focused a lot on Batman's moral code. Like, think of it this way. In the ending of Arkham City, Batman actually goes through a thought process where he's contemplating whether he should give the cure to the Joker or not. And he says that every decision you've ever made ends in death and misery. People die. I stop you, you'll just break out and do it again. And given the way, Batman said that at the end of Arkham City, it made it seem like this was something they were going to touch upon in Batman Arkham Knight before, developmental decisions just forced them to think of something different. But it really feels like that was the perfect way to set up Batman Arkham Knight to focus entirely on Batman's moral code. And furthermore, in the comics that detail the events between Batman Arkham City and Batman Arkham Knight, there were actually points where Batman was thinking that he missed the Joker. Like, he said that he missed the Joker because it almost gave him a reason to improve himself. And then, when crime actually fell, when Joker died, the fact that Joker died and crime fell, which is something that Batman has been trying to avoid for so long, it could have easily been implemented into Batman Arkham Knight to really bring this whole new point of view on Batman's moral code that would then allow him to further refine his moral code and maybe trust in his allies and really bring about the next lessons for this next generation of heroes with Robin and with Oracle and with Nightwing and maybe give Jason Todd a new chance at life to be something better. But no, they didn't touch upon that at all, and it was a big missed opportunity now that I think about it. When you just factor in Batman Arkham City and the way Batman was feeling in the comics between the events of Batman Arkham City and Batman Arkham Knight, that could have been the perfect way of actually concluding the Arkham series in a way that was interesting and maybe evolve Batman's character a lot more to its penultimate endpoint. But I just don't feel like they did that at all with the ending of Arkham Knight. And while it was really cool that Batman finally conquered fear, because he was completely immune to Scarecrow's fear toxin, and he locked away the Joker in his mind, which, again, if the reasoning for why Joker was there was better and not because of the fact that, somehow Joker's blood is still in Batman despite the fact that he cured himself, and that's just how Joker's consciousness is able to manifest, what makes no sense. It could have been so much better than that, but then we have the ambiguous ending at the end of Batman Arkham Knight where those two thugs are trying to mug that family, and then that weird figure of Batman just appears, and it's... what is that even trying to show? I don't understand the whole point of that. Is someone else masquerading as Batman? Is someone using fear toxin? Is that Batman's legacy somehow living on? It's such a strange ending, and it makes no sense at all. And they just could have done so much better with that. But no, they didn't. And, that's just one of the main reasons why I feel like Arkham Knight just doesn't end the series in a way that actually feels satisfying. When you consider the current positions in life the villains are occupying right now, and also the fact that Gotham hasn't really changed much ever since Batman sacrificed himself at the end of Arkham Knight. And then you have those DLCs which showcase his allies rounding up the villains yet again. I didn't really understand the whole point of that. What was it showing? It didn't feel like it was contributing to anything substantial for the story. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on this. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the ending of Arkham Knight, if you liked it or not. I mean, in the moment, when I was first getting that ending in my first playthrough, it was cool, but when I look at it now, it doesn't feel as satisfying as I originally thought. I feel like it could have been a lot better, and it didn't feel like it concluded the Arkham series in a way that was good. And then you have the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game, which apparently takes place in the same universe as Batman Arkham. So what is the whole point of that when most likely Batman's going to be coming back in that game? So you see what I mean when I say it's just they could have touched upon more points with the ending of Arkham Knight, but they actually didn't. Yeah, that's just where I stand in my overall thoughts on Batman Arkham Knight's ending. That game is pretty flawed for being the final Arkham game, and why I consider it to be my least favorite Arkham game. And I've been talking a lot about the things I don't like about Batman Arkham Knight, but I haven't really had the chance to talk about Origins so much, and why I consider Origins to be my favorite of the Arkham games. But I don't think this is the correct time to talk about it, given that there's not much time for me to discuss my thoughts on Origins. So I'll just sum up what just happened. So we've just done some Predator encounters in the Botanical Gardens. We did some minor combat encounters, but the Botanical Gardens is pretty simple. And as you can see right here, the open world is not populated by Ivy's Titan-infected plants, and also Arkham inmates. The Titan-infected plants, they're very sensitive to motion, so you'll want to remain crouched as you're moving towards them so that they don't fire their spores too early. I'm not sure what's wrong with this one. Normally they're supposed to be turning red, but this one was pulsating very early when I was nowhere near it, and it wasn't even turning red. Rather odd. And then the Arkham inmates, you'll definitely want to be careful of them. The number of times I'm just busy minding my own business, killing Titan-infected plants, or I'm just running to a different area, and I don't notice an Arkham inmate right behind me, and I either counter him at the last second, or he gets the grab out. Really, really obnoxious. But at the same time, it definitely makes sense for the kind of enemy they are. And did you see that just then? I didn't explain this in the previous video when we were first getting introduced to the Arkham inmates, but there's something really fun that I like to do with this enemy. Like, this enemy, the general way you want to deal with them is just to counter them when they try to grab you, because it'll just put them on the ground instantly, and then you can finish them up with a ground takedown, or you can use the Bat Claw to instantly floor them. But my favorite way of dealing with them is to time my running kick so that I can just launch them into the sky, and because they get launched at such an absurd height, it instantly incapacitates them. I mean, the thing is that the timing on when you're supposed to initiate the running kick is very specific. It's the most specific kind of counter to their attack, and so at times you will get the hit out, but they won't be instantly incapacitated, so you'll have to finish them off with a ground takedown, and then if you mistime it, sometimes they'll get the grab out on you, which is definitely why I don't recommend you do it the way I'm doing it. I'm only doing it because I take pride in just discovering that, because it's a lot of fun to do. But in a casual playthrough, Batman Arkham Knight, don't bother doing that. Just counter them and finish them up with a ground takedown. And we have now reached the beginning of intensive treatment, which I will talk about in the next video. But this concludes the Botanical Gardens. Stay tuned for the future parts. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.